Welcome back to another deep dive with us. So many of you out there are, well, devout Catholics. You want to take your faith seriously, and we get questions all the time about Marian consecration. So today we're going to explore just that, how to live it out practically day to day.
That's a great topic. Lots to unpack.
It is. And to help us go deep, we're turning to Father René Laurentin's book, Meaning of Consecration Today. It's a bit heady at times,
Oh, yeah, it's dense.
but we'll try to bring out those golden nuggets, make it practical for all of us.
Absolutely. And Father Laurentin himself really emphasizes that. I mean, the title itself even says it, a Marian model for a secularized age. He wants this to be relevant, for how we live now.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. What makes consecration, especially Marian consecration, so important in today's world? I mean, it's not like we're building arks or observing the Sabbath in the same way as in the Old Testament, right?
Right. It's not about those external ritual. It goes deeper.
So more of an internal thing.
Yeah, Laurentin talks about it as a transformation of the heart and a willing surrender, your whole self given to God.
Okay, so how does Mary fit into all of this?
Well, that's what makes Marian consecration unique. We're doing this surrender through Mary because she's got that special role, in salvation history.
I see, like she's a bridge to Jesus.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that Fr. Laurentin actually sees this, entrusting ourselves to Mary as an answer to the challenges of, well, being Catholic in today's world.
You're talking about secularization, right? He had some pretty strong words about how it's affecting the church itself.
He did, yeah. He's concerned about, well, how secularism leads to less religious practice, a weaker faith in general. But he sees Marian consecration as a way to fight back, to rediscover what's at the heart of our Catholic tradition.
It's not just about me and my piety then.
No, it affects the whole church. And he actually points to historical examples where consecration movements, often with Mary at the center, they really revitalized the church.
Like when St. Gertrude the Great promoted devotion to the Sacred Heart, right? Or the growth of monastic life.
Those are great examples. And he talks about, well, figures like St. Louis de Montfort and St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Oh, powerful figures. Both very devoted to Mary.
They were instrumental in pushing for Marian consecration, and their approaches, they were different, but that goal was the same, complete surrender to God, but going through Mary.
I can already hear some of our listeners, though, they might be thinking, hold on, doesn't this focus too much on Mary? Shouldn't we be focused on Jesus?
Oh, that's a common concern, and René Laurentin addresses it head on. Marian consecration, it's not about replacing Jesus, it's about deepening your relationship with him.
So it's not either.
Not at all. Mary always points to her son. She's not competing with him for our devotion.
It's almost like asking a close friend, someone who knows someone you want to get to know better, to put in a good word for you.
Exactly. And then there's that other question, can we even consecrate ourselves? Like, isn't that something only God does?
Right. Only God makes things holy.
And Fr. Laurentin clarifies this. He says it's not about us making ourselves holy. It's our response to God's grace.
Our free will comes into it then.
Right, a willing surrender. But it's God's love that makes that surrender possible.
It's aligning ourselves with his will.
Yes. And recognizing that true holiness, it comes from him. And here's something I found really insightful. Fr. Laurentin points out how in our modern Western world, we often prioritize, reason and logic. But we kind of neglect the language of the heart.
Right. It's all about being rational.
And so he sees devotion to the Sacred Heart and the Immaculate Heart as a way to reclaim, the importance of love and how we relate to God.
Love is at the heart of it all.
Exactly. Authentic faith, it's not just about rules and doctrines. It's about cultivating that heart filled with love for God and then letting that love, overflow into everything you do. It's about letting that love transform you, from the inside out. And that's really what Fr. Laurentin focuses on with Marian consecration. It's not just an intellectual thing. It's about cultivating this deep personal relationship with Mary and through that relationship, allowing her to transform us.
It makes you think about those images of Mary, with her heart exposed, often with Jesus' Sacred Heart, too.
Powerful imagery.
They really show you, like, love is at the center of it all.
Absolutely. And Fr. Laurentin goes on to explain how Marian consecration opens us up to the work of the Holy Spirit, who is, of course, the source of all love.
So, just to be clear, it's not that Mary gives us grace directly, right?
Right. She's not the source of grace, but she helps us to be more open to it.
Okay, that makes sense.
He explains that her yes to God, at the Annunciation, that made her the model of receptivity to the Holy Spirit. So when we consecrate ourselves to her, we're basically asking her to, to help us cultivate that same openness, that same willingness to let God work in us.
It's like saying, Mary, you said yes to God in such a radical way. Teach me how to do that too.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And so with all this talk about the heart, love, the Holy Spirit, you might be wondering, okay, but how do I actually live this out?
Right. What does this actually look like day to day?
It's one thing to understand the theology, but then what?
Exactly. And for Laurentin, he gives us some real practical guidance. He doesn't just leave us hanging.
Not at all. In fact, he gives us a clear roadmap. He outlines, specific practices to help us weave Marian consecration into our everyday lives.
Lay it on us then.
He focuses on three main things: prayer, charity, and devotion.
Okay, so it's not just a one-time prayer, you're done.
No, it's an ongoing commitment. You express it through these three things.
Gotcha. Well, let's start with prayer.
F.R. Laurentin reminds us that prayer is the lifeline of any spiritual journey. But for someone who's consecrated to Mary, it takes on this, special significance. You're nurturing that relationship with her, talking to her, listening to her, and allowing her to, lead you closer to God.
So what does that look like practically?
Well, he highlights certain prayers, especially the rosary.
Okay, full disclosure, I struggled with the rosary. Sometimes it feels repetitive.
I understand. But F.R. Laurentin doesn't see it as just, saying a bunch of Hail Marys. He sees it as a meditation, going through the mysteries of Christ's life with Mary as your guide. You're contemplating each mystery, thinking about what it means, and letting those reflections really shape your heart.
So you're entering into those events, but with Mary, seeing them through her eyes.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes going to Mass regularly. Marian consecration, it doesn't replace the sacraments, it enhances them. When you receive the Eucharist with a heart consecrated to Mary, you open yourself up more fully to the grace that's coming through that sacrament.
I like that. It's like bringing Mary with you to Mass.
You got it. And he encourages us to sprinkle little Marian prayers throughout our day, too.
So you're staying connected to her, even when life's busy.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second pillar, charity. Because Marian consecration isn't just about your personal piety. It has to flow outward into actions, acts of love and service.
So it's not enough to just pray the rosary and go to Mass. I got to walk the walk, too.
Yeah, you got to put your faith into action. Remember, true love always seeks the good of the other. So you let Mary's love inspire you. You become more compassionate, more forgiving, more generous with other people.
Makes me think of people like Mother Teresa. She dedicated her life to the poor. And Leech Walesa, too, with his fight for justice, both deeply devoted to Mary.
Exactly. They show you how this devotion can lead to amazing acts of, selflessness and courage. Mm-hmm. And, putting your faith into action, that can feel overwhelming sometimes. We've all been there. But Father Laurentin says, start small. Look for everyday opportunities. It could be volunteering, helping a young person, just being more present for your family and friends.
It's the little things done with love.
Yeah, that's what matters. Even the smallest acts of kindness, if they're done with a loving heart, they can have a huge impact.
Like that quote, do small things with great love.
Beautiful, right. And that takes us to the third pillar, devotion. This is where we get into those tangible expressions of your love for Mary. Those little love notes, you could say, that remind you of your commitment to her and to her son.
You're talking about things like wearing the miraculous medal or going on pilgrimages?
Exactly. Those pilgrimages to Lourdes or Fatima, they can be so powerful. Father Laurentin sees these devotions not as empty rituals, but as real ways to connect with Mary on a deeper level.
It's like physically going to Mary, seeking her out.
It is, in a sense. And retreats focused on Marian themes, those can be really enriching, too. It's dedicated time for prayer, reflection, and renewal. But with all these devotions out there, it can be hard to know where to begin.
It's like walking into a spiritual gift shop. You don't know which treasure to pick up first.
I love that. And F.R. Laurentin acknowledges that. He says, explore different devotions. See what speaks to you.
So no need to feel pressured to do it all.
Not at all. Maybe it's praying the rosary with a specific intention. Maybe it's creating a Marian altar in your home. The point is to find those tangible ways to connect with Mary that really speak to you, that strengthen your consecration.
Feels like René Laurentin's giving us a pretty well-rounded approach then. It's not just about being super pious on your own. It's about, letting that devotion actually change how you treat people, how you live in the world.
That's really it. And it goes back to what we were saying about transformation. He doesn't want us to just check boxes. He wants it to really change who we are deep down.
He uses that image of consecration as launching into God's love, with Mary as our guide. I like that. It's so dynamic. but also about surrender.
Beautiful image. And it shows how consecration isn't about being stuck. It's about being drawn in deeper and deeper to God with Mary right there with us.
And it's not a solo trip either, right? For Laurentin talks about the communal side of it too.
Absolutely. He reminds us that our consecration to Mary, it's not just me and her, it's about how that relationship changes how I act with others, with the whole world even. Like he says, ambassadors of Mary's love.
Like Mother Teresa, Leech Walesa, they come to mind again. Their devotion to Mary, it clearly fueled how they worked for justice, served others. Consecration had to mean something real, you know?
Exactly. And that brings up another important point. For Laurentin is very clear that consecration isn't magic. Like Mary's not going to wave a wand and fix all your problems.
No quick fixes.
No. It's about humbly surrendering to God's will, trusting that he'll work through us, through Mary, to do what he wants. It's actively cooperating with grace, letting Mary guide us toward holiness, and becoming more like Jesus.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away? That aha moment they can hold on to?
I'd say this. Marian consecration, it's not just some religious practice, some idea. It's a journey of love, surrender, transformation. It can change your heart, your relationships, how you live in the world. It's saying yes to letting Mary lead you closer to God. And that's where you find real freedom, real fulfillment.
And it's a journey that happens in those little moments each day, right? Not some grand gesture, but through prayer, acts of love, and wanting to have a heart like Mary's.
That's it.
So to everyone listening, as you explore Marian consecration, remember what Friar Laurentin said. To be consecrated to Mary is to enter into the movement of her own heart. A heart totally given to God and open to the needs of the world. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to discover what Marian consecration can bring to your life.